Hey, it's Rod Yates. Welcome to Mastering Events, an Audience Republic podcast. Each episode, I'll be talking to some of the world's most accomplished event professionals to discover how they got where they are today, the lessons they've learned throughout that journey, and their insights around event marketing and maximizing ticket sales. My guest today is Laurie Kirby, founder of FestForums, North America's premier conference for the festival industry. Each year in Santa Barbara, festival producers from the music, film, and food and wine industries gather to swap ideas and network at FestForums, which Laurie co-founded in 2015. Laurie herself has plenty of first-hand experience in the festival industry, having played a key role in establishing the Newport International Film Festival, as well as serving as the president and chief creative officer of the International Film Festival Summit. Her career to date has been colourful and multifaceted, having worked as an attorney for over 20 years, as well as managing and consulting for dozens of film festivals and filmmakers, and serving as a producer and consultant on many independent films. A large part of her focus now, though, is FestForums, and throughout this interview, we talk about Laurie's approach to running a successful conference, as well as the festival trends that emerged at the most recent FestForums. But we started by talking about her earliest experiences in entertainment.
As a small child, I was creating plays out on our porch. I would run around and be a different character. And all through school, I starred in all the high school plays. I was really active in theater. I also loved film. I loved music. I played guitar with my dad every night. And I grew a deep, abiding love for great film. I was in high school in the very first year before I started and became a socialite. I was alone because I didn't know anyone, and all I did was watch the TMC classic type films. And so all of those things led me to thinking that that's where my career was going to be. But I did always think, well, either I'll be an actress or I'll be a lawyer. And my mother said, you're not going to be an actress, you're going to be a lawyer. And so the rest is history, as they say.
Right. So you did want to pursue acting? That would have been a dream at some point?
It was. And actually, my best friend from high school, he went on to become a pretty successful, well-known actor. So it is kind of funny how our careers always parallel. And we were also both athletes, too. I was very active in sports. And I also worked in the sports world as an attorney as well. So I've been very lucky in my career. I've been able to pursue all those things that I love.
Yeah. Do you think that when you finally went into law, do you think that gave you a unique perspective on things when you started to head back into entertainment and organize festivals and eventually arrive at FestForums?
Well, it's a funny thing. You know, we like ex-cons, when you meet a fellow lawyer who's gotten out of it, we all talk about how we got out. And you'll find a lot of people in the entertainment business do come from the practice of law. It gives you an incredible ability to think logically and to work in a mission-driven space where organization is so important. We have those tools in place from our legal training. Yes, absolutely.
And I have seen you say that there is no substitute for an experienced lawyer on your team. What are your tips, particularly for perhaps smaller, more niche events in terms of engaging a lawyer?
Well, a lot of them are nonprofits, and if so, you can certainly ask around for attorneys. I would suggest not using real estate attorneys to do entertainment law, even though I was a real estate attorney at one point. There's no slight against them. You might need them for some issues, but typically the entertainment law issues and deal with intellectual property and sponsorship. And so the issues are totally different, but you can usually find someone, and you can also go to lawyers for the arts. Obviously, if you're more robust, you can also find lawyers who will engage for lower rates because they'd like to do these things and want to get involved. But I highly recommend you get an attorney before rather than after you start your venture.
Absolutely. Moving forward many years now to setting up FestForums in 2015, which you did in Santa Barbara. And I think it was interesting. I saw an interview with you where you were talking about the fact that you decided on Santa Barbara as opposed to LA because you wanted this to become a destination conference, as opposed to if it was in New York or a city like that, for example, where people might just be rushing in for a little bit and then rushing off. Like, how important has the location been to the health of the conference?
Well, it's been a great help and also a hindrance because it is not in a major city. But I knew, having done conferences in New York, that they often are drive-bys. And that wasn't what I was looking for. I really wanted an immersive experience because I see this as somewhat of a retreat for festival producers. And so once they make the schlep, they're amazed at where they are. Those who have been here usually have fond memories. Those who have never been are astonished by the beauty. And it really has become part of our story, is that it is in the American Riviera.
Right. And do you think that then puts festival producers in a state where they're not, because obviously they've got a lot going on in their lives, a lot going on professionally. Do you think this fact that this is something of a retreat allows them to relax a little bit more and lead to more insights coming out?
That's the hope, and that is the plan of what I do. I really treat it as if I were the attendee there, and what would I want to have experienced? Putting them on the Pacific Ocean across the street with a beach, and the ability to sit at the hotel bar and talk to other festival producers, or walk along the beach, or go to a club and enjoy live music or the great restaurants here, I think really does put people at ease. And I think that's what's created the reputation, if you will, that it is a place you want to be at and you don't want to miss.
Have you seen collaborations come out of FestForums just from people talking?
Many, many, many collaborations. I've seen them amongst festivals. I saw it with Tribeca and the New York Food and Wine Festival. I've seen it come out of companies. I've seen companies merge as a result. The whole idea is that you walk away with hopefully some takeaways, some new business contacts. So yeah, I get emails all the time from people saying, I met so-and-so at FestForums and now we're working together. So, and that's really the goal of what I do, is trying to create those collaborations.
Do you think destination conferences are a trend in the conference space at the moment, or becoming a trend, or have they always been a trend?
They've always been a trend. It really ranges depending. There are literally tens of thousands of conferences just in this country. There's a show even for conferences called CISO, and they explore those things. So every conference producer has to decide for themselves what's most important. And it could be you have an RFP that you put out. For instance, I could do that, where a second, third tier, fourth tier city, I don't want to malign any city in middle America, but let's just say an underserved cultural city wants to bring us in, and they would in return pay us to be there. So you have to look at the economics of what you're trying to do. Would I be able to draw people to that city versus I'm maybe paying a premium to have them there? And I think that's a very personal decision. But given the type of people, the creatives that we have coming, I think this is the right city for them. And it's become very much a point of attraction in terms of who comes to the event.
Is it a competitive space, the conference space?
It is, but not for me, right? Because it's a niche and I'm the only one in North America that does it. What I'm competing against are things like the Super Bowl and the Grammys, because the people who are coming are in those markets, and Intix, and of course, Polestar is a big event, although they're a great partner of mine. So those are really the things that I have to look at when calendaring this event.
Well, I've seen you talk about the fact that one of the successes of the conference is that you get a lot of repeat business, whether it's attendees, whether it's speakers, whether it's sponsors. What do you think you've done, or what do you do to be able to encourage that repeat business beyond just making sure that it's a good event? Are there certain things that you can do to nurture that repeat attendance?
Well, I really work on very hard with my team on making sure that everybody who is there feels well attended to. And that if you came and you said to me, I really want to meet X being a person, that I would have myself or someone on the team introduce you. Because you're there a lot of times with a goal of some of the folks you want to meet and some of the things you want to have happen. And so, yeah, and we do really unique creative events. We just had our Puppies Palooza, and we do other things that kind of create memories, because memories remain in the brain. And so people want to recreate that good feeling that they had. So it's very much a part of my consciousness we have massages available on site and good food and wine available for folks. So it's very important to create that experience, and also to stay in touch with our sponsors and our partners and our speakers throughout the year, and to remain active and to integrate them into all of our social media calendars so that they feel the love year round.
Before I pick up on that point, Puppies Palooza sounds very interesting. What was Puppies Palooza?
One of our partners, Eventney, has done this, and basically we bring in puppies from a local shelter that can be adopted. And we had them all out, and we did live music. We did like a little mini event with the lunch and ciders poured and all sorts of things. And you got a turn to sit with the puppies, and if you were eligible, you could adopt some of the puppies. And it was just such a win-win. And it really was the highlight because, nobody doesn't like puppies. It was one of those wonderful memories, and I've done other things like that. We did something with Delta Airlines where under everyone's seat after we did a panel with them was some kind of a Delta's voucher. This year we did quizzes where you won merchandise and chocolate bars. And so I try to create a really fun environment where you want to come back. But it's also very serious, and that business has to get done.
Absolutely. You mentioned that, you want to make sure people are attended to. If they want to meet someone, you will make sure that happens. How much do you know about your attendees prior to them coming? Like, how much data do you try and gather in terms of what they want to get out of the conference, what their interests are, and so on?
We do surveys throughout the year. I do 1 or 2 a month, trying to gauge what their interests are. We do post-event surveys, finding out what they liked, what they didn't like, what they attended, what they didn't attend, where they felt we should do more, where they thought we should do less, what did they think about the after events, what would they like to see in future. And it's very hard to be all things to all people because a festival is a very generic term and covers a lot of different events. But because we are unique and only serve that population and no other, we garner enough attention that we can try and have a snippet for everybody there. And what I say to each panel before they go on stage is think of who's in the audience and make sure you give them 3 takeaways.
Right. Were there any, when you think about those surveys, have there ever been any revelations for you that caught you off guard, perhaps?
I'm actually shocked at how overwhelmingly positive they are. That kind of shocks me because I'm always looking and just seeing the mistakes.
Right.
But yeah, you get the grousing about things that you think, are you kidding me? Like, I don't like blue cheese. I don't like cheddar. You get those kind of silly comments. But a lot of it is usually things that we've already noticed. Like it was too noisy in the hallway, and I think, oh God, I'm dying 1,000 deaths because I was agonizing over that happening. So there aren't really too many surprises, and there are always things we're trying to fix. Because even though I try to enjoy the moment, most of the time I'm looking at what can I do better and what should I be fixing.
Right. And I imagine it's quite fraught as well because your clientele are in the business of putting on festivals or events. And this is a festival of some description for them. So no doubt they have very firm ideas about what they like and what they don't.
Oh yeah, and every time there's a technical glitch, I just make a joke about it. I said, you guys are all dying 1,000 deaths from me, right? Because they're all event producers. So they see all the warts, but they also are empathetic because they themselves too have been in the same shoes.
Okay. You mentioned that you want to make sure that you incorporate your panelists into your social media schedule and into your posting and make them feel part of the event. When you think about some of the channels you use to communicate either with existing attendees or trying to attract new attendees, where are you finding that you have your most success? Is it socials? Is it that direct-to-consumer email marketing, SMS? What are you finding to be the best channels to get the repeat audience and find a new audience?
Well, the data would show me that videos on Facebook are our best friends. And that emailing through LinkedIn is our worst. And yet, I'm extremely active on LinkedIn. I have over 10,000 followers. And I write a lot of content for that. And our newsletter goes out to about 24,000 subscribers. And we get a pretty high open rate on that, at least 30%. So though that direct messaging seems to work well. But in terms of trying to get to festivals, we found that doing lookalikes and things of that nature through Facebook, through Instagram, do get the highest click through.
Okay. And then with the newsletters, do you find any content in particular seems to resonate? I received a newsletter from you this morning, actually, which had some takeaways from your recent FestForums conference, and various other newsworthy pieces. What do you find really resonates with your audience in the newsletters?
It's really funny you say that. We do get a lot of people who answer the surveys. I get a lot more people interested in FestForums than I would think, because I do feel sometimes that I'm overemphasizing our conference over some of the other content. And so I do need to strike a balance of what's going to be interesting to the audience. And I curate that myself. So I spent all week reading all the trades and the non-trades to find things. I mean, I write about all kinds of things. It could be some obscure festival that I found, and I want to report on that. Or the biggest open I had last week was about how bad red wine is for you, an article in the New York Times. And I said, I'd love to hear from you food and wine festivals. Now that wine drinking has declined, how are you going to deal with this onslaught of negative media? So it can be any number of things that attract people. And I try to branch all different genres of festivals. It could be wellness. It could be film and what's happening there. It could be food and wine. The majority is music, because that is where most of our partners come from. That is the most financially robust industry with the largest number of people. So the focus always has to be on music. But there isn't one thing that interests them. But I do go off the reservation a lot. And I'll say, take a look at this film that you may not have heard about. Or listen to this podcast that I find quite interesting. And I do find that, because I've been doing it for so long, that there is trust from the sender to our audiences.
That's really important. And you're giving them value as well, hence the open rate.
I spent a lot of time on it. I spend probably 3 or 4 hours a day scouring media, social media, the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, all the trades, as well as watching documentaries, so that I can provide information that I think is hopefully relevant and interesting. And I think it comes from my film festival background as curating film festivals. Trying
Absolutely.
to engage audiences has been something that I've had to do for a very long time.
Talking about the FestForums conference, the most recent one, which happened as we're talking just a few weeks ago, February 15 to February 17, and looking at some of the perhaps recurring themes that came out of the conference, I believe one of them was the rising costs in festival production. What insights came out of the festival in terms of how people are navigating these costs, where they're making adjustments, how they're, preventing passing all the cost shock over to the audience? Were there any insights around those topics which came out?
Well, obviously, post-pandemic, we've seen a lot rise in all costs in all different areas of life. Obviously, the U.S. economy's biggest gripe these days is impending inflation, which the Fed has done a pretty good job at tamping down. Some people would disagree, but I think that has held down a lot of what could have been significant inflation. And so it's problematic, and you do see some of the festivals go out of business because there is a scarcity. And big ones like Firefly, I think it's the second year that they haven't been, and they were ones to watch a long time ago, and I think they were bought by, I can't remember which one, AEG, Live Nation, but it's been paused. So the market is shrinking, and that is a natural economic result of these rising costs. And artists also deciding that perhaps they'd rather tour. And when you have venues, they've got all of that sort of locked down. Festivals, you're talking about an open field where you're bringing everything in. And so that's why the Live Nations, who can cost share, can survive through these types of things. So you have to be really savvy, and you have to hack the problem with all kinds of things without shortchanging the experience, because it's got to be safe, it's got to sound good, you got to have Wi-Fi, and there are some must-haves that you cannot do away with. So, perhaps you don't have the same headliners because they have gone up, their cost has gone up. So you've really got to jigger it, because people have higher expectations and they don't want to spend more money. So there's no one solution. There's many solutions along the way.
Were any of the panelists or even any conversations that you overheard sharing some of those solutions about just what they're doing to stay afloat and not only stay afloat, but maintain the prosperity of their festival?
Well, I didn't hear one conversation because all I did was run around. But what I think, is happening is that there's going to be a lot more cost sharing, which is again what a live nation is, right? It's just you have to, bundle your resources. And I think after post-pandemic, it became clear that festivals were just booking themselves on top of each other, so they were oversaturating the market. So by pulling back and having some hiatus years and retooling some of the experiences perhaps and shrinking and, while at the same time wanting to be more sustainable, which also is more expensive, it just means that people's profits are going to be cut into. And so you've just got to be very careful in terms of how you plan your festival and really be realistic about what you can do.
Do you think this creates an opportunity perhaps in more secondary markets or perhaps in more niche festivals, just where perhaps there isn't that level of competition?
It's both. I think I've always believed that niche festivals are really the heart and soul of what a festival is. To me, some of these huge festivals are just a tour with multiple acts. And I think a festival, and the reason I got involved in this is because it is a unique tribal experience with like-minded people who are assembled, and that's a tale as old as time. So that, and the fact that secondary markets and tertiary markets, which I hate to call them that because it diminishes their opinion of them or the world's opinion of them, but I think we're the lower population cities where there are less competitive events can do well if they are smart in their planning, know their audiences, and also look at routing. Routing plays a big role in festivals that people don't necessarily appreciate. I believe that smaller festivals can survive if you look at some of the advantages from your community. As I ran the Newport International Film Festival, I looked at the things that Newport had that other cities didn't have and played upon those strengths to create its own identity. And yes, I think that you can survive because those local communities, if you manage it correctly, will support you. They like to see the tourism and the commerce.
Okay. One of the ways that festivals can alleviate or navigate rising costs is through sponsorships. Who are you seeing doing a really good job of attracting and managing sponsors?
Well, I think that Danny Wimmer Presents really understands who their audience is. You look at the Insomniacs. I think I'm maybe in C3, maybe I'm biased because I'm friends with all of those sponsor directors. But they really understand who their consumer is. You would be surprised to hear the number of festivals that do not take sponsors, that do not align with their festivals. I recently had someone from a reggae festival that spoke, someone from an R&B festival that spoke at FestForums. They both talked about who their true audiences are and that they have turned down deals, ticketing company deals, consumer brand deals that don't align. So they make sure that they're selective with who their sponsors are. And then they make sure that activation also aligns, because there's nothing worse than going through the machinations of creating a whole experience that lands flat, because that becomes egg on everyone's face. So they're more time consuming now, they're more difficult, but I think they're more meaningful when they work as they should.
Right. And in terms of attracting sponsors, and even for you with FestForums, what are the best practices for attracting sponsors? How do you sell your concept to these various organizations?
It's really easy, actually. It's the easiest sell in the world. I'm the only North American conference that only focuses on the festival experience, particularly the music festival experience. And you can look at the list of the roster of speakers, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, because I've been doing this for 10 years, although we had years off for COVID, it's really not that hard. This past year was the first year that I had only inbound, which is for me, was a major milestone.
Yeah.
Because it was pulling teeth for the first few years to get people to pay attention. And then it's like the Malcolm Gladwell tipping point. It hit the tipping point where, by word of mouth, those people in the industry that I highly respect and feel aligned with became the ambassadors. And so brands want to be where the people are that, they think are important to talk to. And so we have tiers of consumer-facing brands, let's say like we had for years, Delta. You want to be able to figure out your partners on site. I'm an aggregator. Let's say you're a ticketing platform that's rolling out some new technology and you want to talk to your existing customers and also some potential new customers and test your ideas out. So all of those things are what we do at FestForums. And so new technology, new methods of practices in sustainability and some of these other areas become great testing grounds, and people roll out a lot of things at the conference that garners them attention and gets them an audience.
Absolutely. I've seen you make a really interesting point where you were saying that every festival should have an economic impact study of their festival done as a way of helping them monetize the festivals. Once that study is done, how are those results best utilized? How do you actually put that into the practice of monetizing that festival?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways. We live in a country, unlike European and I'm sure Australia, where the government is supportive of the arts. And this is unfortunately no longer a country where that happens anymore. And so much is done through private capital. But the economic impact study is the one place where you can take that to foundations, to cities, to chambers, to states, and say, look at what I'm doing for this state. Because tourism in any state is always something that's extremely important. And some states, like Hawaii, depend almost entirely on tourism. And so by proving your economic worth, you then have a stake in the economy. And I think you can leverage it with the local community. See how much money we brought in? It would be great if you would partner with us because you will have abundance from it. And empirically, my hotel was so delighted. It was the best days the restaurant had ever had since pre-COVID. So that's like a mini economic impact itself. But, you can measure that. And by doing so, and South by Southwest does a really good job of that. And they then turn around and get a lot of money from Austin and the state of Texas. And so they're sort of the model for that. But that's where I originally got the idea from and have since spoken quite a bit about. I think it's extremely important to know your value in the community, not just in terms of social impact, but economic impact.
Do you see, is it widespread? Do a lot of festivals do that, or is it something that hasn't really caught on yet?
No, I think perhaps the biggest ones do, but no, I don't think that they leverage it enough. And there are sponsorships, and I've had them, where you get a cut of the hotel bookings. And there are more and more organizations that are building in the lifts and the Ubers and the hotels and the restaurants so that you can control where all of that other money's going. Because if you're only getting $500 for your ticket and maybe some merch and some food on site, you're missing all of that incremental revenue that's associated with your event that you should get a piece of. And there are companies out there that are, because of the use of technology, that can track all of that for you and help you maintain some of it.
Speaking of tickets and ticketing, was there much discussion at FestForums this year around ticket pricing strategies? And if so, were there any real kind of key takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I think festivals are loath to keep raising their ticket prices. They don't want to pass along to the consumers. And they do believe in transparency. I mean, there's a couple of things. There's transparency in how much tickets cost and what all the add-ons are. And it has been proven, and I believe you've had Mike Maurer on here before, that people don't want a one-price ticket. They want the breakout. They do better when they see all the breakouts, even though they're irritated because they've seen the price, they've already taken the step of putting it in the cart, and then they go to checkout, and they're extremely irritated at all the surcharges, but they're that far along. If you did all-in pricing, you might dissuade your buyers. The other thing is, should there be transparency by the festivals around how much it's costing them to produce them? So it's kind of a socialistic agreement that we will all agree to share a little bit of these incremental expenses. And by using things like afterpay and pricing agreements, it is making it more achievable to get, because the bulk of your festivals are generally younger people who don't necessarily have as much as disposable income. So those are all interesting things. I know in terms of the biggest festivals and the biggest tours, the secondary market is obviously always a huge problem because it hurts consumers, it hurts the tours, it hurts the big festivals. It only helps the secondary bots that are on the system. So these are all things that, yes, everybody is working towards changing, and dynamic pricing is also part of that. Looking to your audiences, and this is where building up your audience is really important because, for instance, we sell the bulk of our tickets at the very end and at the very beginning, right? So early bird, we get a huge group of people who buy, and then last minute. 50% of the people buy within the last month. And then that whole cycle throughout the middle, there's virtually no ticket buying at all. So, and I think that tracks also with festivals as well. Conferences are a little bit of a different animal, but I think that tracks with the festival industry as well.
How stressful is that for you?
It would be more stressful if I didn't know that was always the way it would be. And when I talk to other conferences and so forth, everyone says everything is last minute. And I think since COVID, people are reluctant to spend money because they don't know, oh, maybe I'll be sick. I do think it made people more aware of that. I think we were a lot more footloose and fancy free about those sort of things. But through COVID, people became more conscious of these things. And so they do wait last minute. So I plan as if, and I look at my analytics and data and compare each year to the prior year and say, okay, well, I happen to know the 50%. So if I know I'm at this number here, then I will assume X here. And I'm doing it so long, it's been a pretty consistent pattern.
Right. And those analytics and that data, how important are they for your decision making just across the board?
I look all the time to see who's opening, what I'm doing, who's interested, what they're interested in, where people are coming from, what types of festivals are coming. And another thing that I'm very keen on is diversity and inclusion. I'm very proud to say one of the few conferences that I see that really, because it's not about women, it's not about minorities, and yet that's a huge pull and draw for what we have. And it's a lot of young people and people of all different colors and backgrounds. And I also have a scholarship program so that anybody who cannot afford a festival or a nonprofit can have a complimentary ticket. So that is top of mind for me in all that I do, that I have the equal amount, if I can, of male and female speakers, as well as the minority populations are well represented.
That must yield insights and takeaways that it's a broad range of insights by having that diversity. I mean, that has to be one of the benefits beyond inclusion, but just the actual information that comes out of the festivals because of that diversity, that must be one of the, I guess, the real bonuses of FestForums.
Well, the whole conference was designed in mind for people of all backgrounds. I go to plenty of conferences that have, who I love, old white men sitting around talking about when they went out on tour with The Who. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to show what's coming next and looking forward and finding, like one woman I had was a young Black female promoter. And her experience and her story is going to be completely different coming from where she is, you know, in New York City, and really succeeding herself. You know, that's a whole different point of view. And I think that represents more of America than people realize. And so I feel that's the story that I want to have told.
Absolutely. One topic that I've seen you raise before is the best practices for festivals in terms of getting the most out of their ticketing partners. How does a festival get the most out of their ticketing partner?
Well, you ask the ticketing partner, what can you do for me? You know, you want me as your partner. So what exactly can you deliver? You know, can I get information on abandoned carts? How quickly do I get paid? What are the fees? And I negotiate those fees hard. What kind of marketing can you do for me? All of those things are important to me. And also, what is your on-site presence going to be? How are you going to fix problems for me? How quickly can you respond to customers who are having a problem? And if you can't get good answers and good referrals, then it's not the right partner.
And do you think that a lot of festivals understand that they have that power in the relationship? They have the power to ask questions of their ticketing partner, to demand that certain needs are met. Do you think there is that, or do some festivals almost see it as a one-way street, that the ticketing partners are doing them a favor by selling their tickets? Do you get any sense of that?
Well, the smart ones get it because they're your first gateway to the experience of interacting with you. So first impressions mean a lot. Right. So you don't want a customer frustrated with your process and not feeling understood. And obviously you want to collect data, but there's nothing more obnoxious to someone trying to register and spend their money and having so many paywalls or hurdles that they just give up because it's too aggravating. And so that is a very intricate dance that you play. And a lot of people, the reason there are so many ticketing companies is people bounce around so often because they have negative experiences with their ticketing partners. And so I think, like everything in life, a lot of it comes down to, because the technology can be somewhat similar, is what is the customer service experience like? How quickly are you responding to those problems, as I said? And is this a partnership? I work with one that shall go unnamed that never answered any of my calls or had any customer service reports or support or reports. And I've worked with other ones that are the exact opposite. So I think it is individualized and everybody has different experiences. It's like, you know, reading a Trustpilot review. You see 1 star and then you see 5 on the next. It's like going to a restaurant. So I think people have different experiences, but having a good relationship with your ticketing company is really paramount. And they serve as a gateway financially for a lot of festivals. They advance a lot of money. They are your bank, in a sense, in many respects. So you have to give the love back. It comes both ways. But I negotiate hard with my ticketing partners, and I know that a lot of the festivals do. And if there's one takeaway here, that's the one I would say is really pay attention to that, because that's the first place your customers are going, is to your ticketing platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Beyond some of the themes that we've spoken about that came out of this year's FestForums, was there anything else, any other kind of major recurring themes that you just heard pop up time and again?
Well, I do think that sustainability, everyone's paying more attention to that. They are just gluttons when it comes to the environment festivals. You know, there's the travel, carbon footprint, there's the garbage on site. There's just so many ways in which festivals are not sustainable events. So, yeah, I think that is going to be the next big thing, particularly since, young people are more and more aware of the impact on our environment. And listen, there's nobody in the world who isn't being impacted by climate change, and sustainability plays a role in that as well. With our food choices, with our travel choices, with how we treat garbage and recycling and farming, and the list goes on and on and on. So I think festivals echo what's going on in the world, and so I think it's a worldwide issue. I think in the United States, not in Europe, we have a huge problem with guns, and you're seeing now more and more festivals are having safety issues. I think drugs is always an ongoing problem, and so physical safety, which is the most manifestly important piece of the whole festival experience, is keeping your customers and your audiences and your staff, and of course your performers, safe. So that, of course, is top of mind.
And talking about that contrast between the US and Europe, I believe one of the panels that you moderated at FestForums this year was looking at the similarities and differences between American and European festivals. What came out of that in terms of, what are the similarities in terms of things like talent acquisition and ticketing and fan loyalty, and what are the differences?
Well, there's more similarities than differences. Europe has a much more seasoned, more mature, more developed, more academic approach to festivals. You have more conferences around it. There's a lot of literature. There's a lot that's been written. There's a lot of studies. There's a lot more government support. But the thing about Americans is when they decide to do something, they put their pedal to the metal. And so that's what I find very interesting is a difference between Europeans. There's I've gone to Glastonbury many times, and I was almost shocked at the quaintness and almost like old-fashionedness of some of the things. And yet it seems to go fine, right? Everything's just fine,
Like what?
Well, I like the merch. The first day I go to get a sweatshirt, everything's sold out. And I'm like, but this is Glastonbury. Haven't you planned for this? And then you go to a trash can and it's just completely overflowing. And I'm like, but this is Glastonbury. Or the mud is so thick and deep that the gates can't even stand up. And people are back to back. And I'm thinking, but haven't you planned for this? And everyone's civilized. It's pouring rain. Everyone's completely civilized. No one is grumbling. No one is mad. The fans are there. They're happy they got their tickets because they bought them in the first 33 seconds. That is not the American way. We are a much more entitled lot in this country. But I think we experiment more. And I think it's hard too because Europeans do want American talent. America still, even though European music is huge, American actors, American musicians still dominate the music and film scene. And so there's obviously more issues on their end for visas and things have gotten more complicated to get in and out of Europe. And so travel has become, I think, more problematic as well. So it's always hard to generalize, but I think we have more similarities than we do have differences. I think the big European festivals are like the American festivals. They have diverse genres of music, but I also think they're so entrenched that, like I said, a Glastonbury ticket, it doesn't matter what the experience is. You're at Glastonbury. And I can tell you the entitled folks from LA would not put up with that at Coachella. I mean, we'd one day of rain at Burning Man and like the world was on fire. So we do tend to catastrophize more here.
Laurie, just last couple of things. San Diego Bay Wine and Food Festival, I believe, was voted the 2024 Festival of the Year at this year's FestForums. Why? What do they get right? What makes them the Festival of the Year?
I have watched Michelle Metter and her team for years and years and years. And this year they were voted US Today's Festival of the Year or Wine Festival of the Year. First of all, it's a great location. If you haven't been, San Diego is absolutely one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And there is a plethora of great food, great wine, great architecture, the beaches, and all of that. And they've really cracked the code on how to appeal to the audience and yet bring in the best chefs in the world and create these incredible, one-of-a-kind experiences. And yet they've done it and have been financially stable through all of this. And really have a remarkable team that really has their finger on the pulse of what's happening. And I think the great wine and food festivals are going to keep growing, because there's no end to what you can do with that type of a festival, right? Because there's all these different experiences that you can create around that. You can create dinners, you can create live music, you can do film with it, you can do wellness. And so I just feel that given the location, the management, the way that the guests are being taken care of, the audience reception, they got it all right.
Right. Very last thing, in terms of, you mentioned that with FestForums, you're one of a kind in North America at the moment. And there's, that's a fantastic position to be in from sponsorship and from attendance. But I presume there must also have been challenges in establishing the festival in the first place to break new ground. What were some of the biggest, just one or two key challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, obviously, having a business-facing event has different challenges than a consumer-facing event. And you're appealing to other business owners. So you really have to get it right, because word will travel fast amongst the other festivals. And so I really was paying to make sure that I understood what the needs were for a group that had never felt they needed this. And coming from being a lawyer, I knew about, continuing legal education. But if you're a festival in a silo, it's not even top of mind. You're just trying to get through your day. So just getting the value proposition out to festivals to say, take 3 days away for yourself for professional development was and still is a challenge at times. Not everybody thinks that. A lot of times the person who starts the festival might be a, disgruntled musician or filmmaker who didn't get into another festival and start their own, and they're off to the races. And you hear that a lot. I put together a concert for my college graduation friends, and the next thing I knew, I was running festivals. They're not professional schools for festival education. And so saying that education is something that you need has been, cracking the code on that has been difficult. Getting those first sponsors in, developing the program and figuring out the economics of it, and learning which sectors of the festival industry were more interested in this. Getting to know people in the industry. I came from the film industry and not the music industry. And what I found was how open and receptive the music industry was. And Kevin Lyman was the first person I went to, and he's sort of a titan in the whole music business. And he really gave me some great pointers, and we almost formed a business partnership over it. And I'm so eternally grateful to him and some of the other greats like Lisa Yukman, who started IEG, is the greatest sponsorship expert probably in the world, Lisa. So I was very lucky to have, these titans of industry around me and to get some pretty big sponsors in fairly early. But no, it was a challenge, and it was, and it still is. I mean, there's still many 13, 14-hour days behind the scenes that people don't know about. But I have to say, I have the most amazing team around me, and they have really made it possible to make this happen. And surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are, and you're on the road to success, man.
Nice. Well, I think that's a great note on which to end. Thank you so much for your time, Laurie. It's been so great to chat with you.
You as well. This has been lovely.